First of all, thank you all so much for joining us at this month's sort of spontaneously put together FourSight U, supporting a virtual world. Really challenging times out there, and really this is kind of the first of what we hope to be many places for a conversation where we can all connect and talk about opportunities, concerns, how we're staying sane, which brings us to our warm-up. So Sarah, go ahead and hit that next slide. So if you've just joined us, a lot of you put your name and location. We'd like you to also put, what's your sanity saver during lockdown? Do you have a specific show that you've been wanting to watch, or games, or just how do you keep sane during what's likely to be at least a few weeks? And Jonathan, that's great. Who says we're staying sane? Whatever that means to you then.
It's a big assumption.
I love it. Ooh, game nights and backyards fires. Andrea, always something. Nice to see you. I fight with my wife. Oh my goodness. These are great. Binge watching Glee. Oh, music, Led Zeppelin. Whiskey and cigars.
Ooh.
All right. So quite a collection here. And feel free to continue putting your sanity savers through. We're going to go on to our next slide, which is just some basic protocol guidelines. As we have a large group joining us today, when you're not speaking, we'll ask you to mute your mic. And if your mic is on, please don't type. And then if you have some sort of distraction behind you, like a bear, Ginny, coming at you in your virtual forest, or dogs, whatever, go on. You can turn off the video when you need, and use chat for any questions you have. And if you want, learn to raise your virtual hand in the participant view. Or if you've got questions, just type them in the chat, and I will moderate them to our presenters, which you will find out next. So let's go through our agenda. Our agenda today is our welcome and warm-up was our sanity saver. So we've got a couple speakers. Sarah Thurber is going to share some FourSight fodder for virtual world, a couple things here from the FourSight suite of products, services, etc., that you might find useful. Then we're going to ask Jonathan Vehar to share his experience supporting a virtual team. And we're going to ask Ginny to share how she supports virtual sessions using Storms. After that, we're actually going to brainstorm with Storms against a challenge about how we collectively, individually can add value to our clients, communities, etc. during this challenging time. We'll do some diverge, we'll do a little bit of converge, and then wrap up. And like I said, our intent is to start to hold these on a more frequent basis, at least once a week, some sort of break. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to take us through some FourSight fodder.
Thanks, Russ. So I want to show you guys some of the products that FourSight has been making, not having anticipated this extenuating circumstance of suddenly everything going online. But we've been building some online products that we thought might be really helpful to you in your practice as you try to continue serving people in a virtual environment and working with online teams. So let me share now the products that we are teed up to do. First of all, they all exist in your FourSight app. So when you go to FourSight Online and log into the member site and get into your app, this is where you're going to find all these great juicy products. The first one I want to show you is under profile. Right now, we're all used to going in and running a FourSight debrief where people don't know their score. We've got a couple of hours to work with the team, and we want to sort of do the FourSight reveal in the middle of the session. But in a virtual session, sometimes you don't have that time. Sometimes it's hard to be on the phone for 2.5 hours. Sometimes you have a shorter call. So one of the things that we thought might be useful is for you to know of the existence of this profile slideshow, which is a 10-minute walkthrough of an individual's FourSight score. The piece I want to show you is that we're actually explaining to people about their scores, and we're walking them through their specific clarify score, so they'll learn if they're a low clarifier, what that might mean. And in the end, the goal here and why we thought it might be useful to you is it saves you time during the session. So you can actually do some experiential activities that are designed for a virtual world. Russ, do you want to share the hilarious alternate to prototype activity that you came up with?
Well, actually, I borrowed this from another colleague of mine after seeing it and thought it would be well-versed to adapt to a FourSight session. This notion is if you're doing experiential using a platform like Zoom, for example, and you've already given them their results through the slideshow that Sarah just shared, one of the things you can do is after you kind of go through, again, what a high clarifier, high ideator, high developer, high implementer is you can put them into breakout groups and, for example, give them 10 minutes to design, as an example, an epic vacation that would appeal to a high clarifier or to a high ideator or to a high developer and high implementer. Give them 10 minutes, they sort of design this, and then they come back and share it as breakout groups. Hilarious. Simple, to the point, really brings out difference in preferences fairly quickly.
Thanks, that's so awesome. So let me show you on two other virtual products that we have that might be very, very useful in your virtual practice. One is what we now call a learner map. This was designed by Greg Sombachner, who's on the call, who developed a way for us to share bits and pieces of learning that aggregate into an online learning platform. So this here is our learner map called Presenting. And you all will find it on your dashboard. If you go to your dashboard and click Learner Maps and click Presenting, this is available, or should be available, to everyone who is certified. There's your certificate. And then each card opens up to a different learner activity, how it works, videos that you can watch, things you can download, and you can click and look at all the different ones. The reason I bring this up in particular is because this week, the FourSight team will add a column here called Running a Virtual Session, and we will include in that the webinar recording of the FourSight U that we had on how to run a virtual session, plus slideshows that are designed for running a virtual session. So that's a useful thing. Last FourSight online item I want to show you guys is a subscription that appears under tools in my learner map because I'm subscribed to that, but it has the entire FourSight tool card library online. So you look at storyboarding, if you click there, there's the tool. You can find the whole thing online. You can click to any of these and find the instructions, the sort of anything that would be in the tool card will be there. So that's really neat. This one is the cheat sheet, where it's an online version of how to walk through, clarify, ideate, develop, and implement in digital form. You can download it. And the last thing, which may be really interesting if you're looking at facilitating things for your clients, is the Innovation Station, which is a one-page per stage walkthrough of clarifying, ideating, developing, and implementing. You can download it in English, French. We actually have it. We have it in Italian. We have it in a number of languages. So again, this week we'll add the library of downloads that we have. And I would like to subscribe all of you who are interested to that tool subscription so that you can look at it, you can play with it, and you can understand what that might be or how that might be useful to clients that you have. So that would be our gift to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sarah. I'm now going to turn it over to Jonathan Vehar. We asked Jonathan to speak about his experience when he was running a virtual team at Dale Carnegie And so, Jonathan, if you are ready, I'm going to turn over control to you, and the floor is yours.
Wow, I have not only the floor, but control. That's exciting.
I like that.
Well, hello, everybody, wherever you are around the world. Wanted to talk a little bit about, I guess you'd call this is the case study part of the presentation in terms of some of the things that I encountered working with, leading, being accountable for a virtual team, and how we used FourSight in order to help develop that team. And so, as Russ mentioned, in my previous role, I was a vice president of product at Dale Carnegie, which hopefully everybody knows is a global training company. And as part of my responsibilities, I had a team of 13 people that were operating mostly around the country, none of whom were in the same office where I was located. I was located in Long Island. A number of the team were in St. Louis. We had a number of people in Florida. We had someone as far away as Thailand, which made it really interesting. And so one of the things that I did immediately as I was sort of waiting to rebuild the team, because we had some vacancies, was essentially set up the regular cadence like you would do if you're face-to-face. I had one-on-ones with people. I had small group sub-team meetings. I had large team meetings. And one of the things that I really wanted to do was to get involved in team building with that group. And so really I was waiting to hire a person, and then somebody left, and then I was waiting to hire 2 people, and then somebody else moved to another position, so I was waiting for 3 people. And I realized in retrospect that I waited way too long. And so part of the reason was that I wanted to make it more efficient to get everybody together in the same space physically to do the team building. And in the end, like, that just never happened. We ended up having an all company meeting on Long Island during one of Long Island's very rare snowstorms that kept some people from actually getting there, that canceled our big team building session. And so it's just kind of like, you just have to shake your head. So I ended up reaching out to Blair and Russ and Sarah, and I said, can you guys help me do some team building virtually? And initially we all sort of shook our heads and said, how do you do that? And in the end, we ended up putting together a three session program. It was 2 hours. I think they were a month apart, Friday mornings. And one of the big initiatives was to do a FourSight debrief with the team. And as part of that, we did pretty much all of the things that you would do in a face-to-face session. We helped people understand the assessment. We walked them through giving them individual feedback. We shared the team profile. And then we did some things that were virtual that I thought were really cool. So one of which was we used the prototype kit. Everybody got a prototype kit. There were 4 people who were co-located, so they all had one prototype kit. All the rest of us had an individual prototype kit. And we went through the prototype activity using our webcam so that we could see what other people were building during the course of it, which was interesting. And that, you know, I don't know that I actually looked at what other people were doing as I was building my fun little thing. And so we built them, we showed them, we debriefed it, and that was a lot of fun. And then I'm getting a signal from Sarah. Thing that we did that I thought was very interesting. The other thing that I thought was really interesting was we actually had people place themselves on a chart that showed where they were, just like you would have them do in a face-to-face session. And so I'll just show you it was a very simple chart where we asked people to just annotate on the screen, show with an arrow where they were located. So we said, hey, here's your clarifier. Just place your name in an arrow where if you're a peak preference, if you have no preference, you have a low preference for that. And then everybody on the team just sort of put their names up. And then we had a great conversation about how's this group work together as clarifiers. And then we went to Ideator and all those sorts of things. So some real interesting, fun ways of doing the same things that you do, but doing them in different ways virtually.
How can you enhance engagement remotely?
Good. So I think there's 2 ways to answer that. One is to get very specific and say, keep people engaged by making it interesting, right? So if we look at this as, hey, I'm going to lecture for an hour and I want everybody to pay attention, good luck with that, right? I'm going to start checking my email and everyone else is going to start checking their email. One of the things that I think it's really important for those of us who started as facilitating face-to-face, one of the things that's really important to recognize is that online engagement is different, and it can be just as effective. And in fact, there are certain things that online you can do better than you can face-to-face. And many of you, if you have a reaction like mine, the first time you heard that was, yeah, BS, right? I don't believe that. And the fact of the matter is that there are great ways of getting lots of information, lots of input, good conversations from folks immediately. Ginny, I know, is going to talk about that very shortly. And I will say Ginny was part of the secret of our success, and that Ginny facilitated many, many creative problem solving sessions for us. And so there are different ways of doing it. Primarily, it's leveraging the technology, using the technology for what it does really well, and figuring out different ways of doing things that you would do face-to-face. And there are some great resources for that.
Great.
I'll get one in a moment.
I love it. Are those preference charts available, Jonathan, those slides? Would you be willing to?
I'll tell you that the preference chart that I just showed, I literally made in 30 seconds as Sarah was talking. Because it's a PowerPoint with 2 lines across it.
All right, so make your own.
Make your own. And if you want, I'll send you this one.
Yeah, you can even do it online in Zoom. And if you watch the how to run a virtual session, we actually show you in Zoom how you can create it using the whiteboard feature in Zoom. So
there are many ways of doing the same thing using the technology.
Great. So there are a couple other questions, just very quickly. Did people take a lot of time to share their prototypes, or did you just jump into questions about the process?
We spent a fair amount of time showing the prototypes, just like you would face-to-face. We had people show them. We had people do their advertisement for it. We talked a little bit about it. So we spent about the same amount of time that we would do in a face-to-face session. We were just seeing it on the screen rather than while standing around the table. Great.
And the final question for Jonathan was to clarify, was the 6-hour team building all on the profile or other tools, or a variety of things?
Yeah, there was a bunch of things that we covered. We really had one session was focused using FourSight. We did some other things where we talked about things that motivate us. We talked about how the organization's mission relates to our individual mission. So a number of different things. FourSight was one of those 3 sessions.
I will say I spoke to Blair, who said if people are interested in how he constructed that, he'd be happy to run one of these sessions on exactly what he did and sort of the course design of what he did. So again, send feedback, let us know if that's something you'd like to do or hear, because we are happy to share that.
Okay. Can I just say one other thing? So if you look behind me, there's the picture next to the M&Ms of the tree, and that was part of a team building session that we did. That was a virtual wine and paint session, and so that was one of those things. One of my colleagues said, "Hey, I want to do this." She organized the wine and paint session, had slides of each stage of the painting thing. She sent beverages to everybody on the team. There may or may not have been a violation of interstate alcohol shipping laws, but I'm not going to comment on that. But it was an awful lot of fun. So there's a lot of things to do, a lot of things you can think about in terms of how do you adapt it to a virtual world. That was one of my favorites, and that's why that picture is on my wall. It's on the wall of everyone else on the team too.
I love it. Thanks so much, Jonathan. Great. We're now going to switch over to Ginny Santos, who's going to share with us a little bit about how she supports virtual meetings, including how she supported Jonathan's team a couple times. And so, Ginny, the control goes from Jonathan over to you.
Thank you. I love the examples that Jonathan just gave. And that's exactly what I would want to emphasize as well, is that facilitating something virtually can be just as fun as when you're doing it in person. And in fact, as facilitators, have so much fun planning it, because the challenges are a little bigger, and because you are creative problem solvers, you get to overcome those challenges in really fun ways. So this has become my playground over the last few years, and I'm having a lot of fun turning in-person sessions into virtual sessions that are really engaging and fun and productive at the same time. So the main tool that I use is called Storms, and that's the tool that I used when I facilitated sessions with Jonathan's team. And I just want to take you right into it and have everyone play a little bit in it. A bunch of you have probably already seen it, but we're going to do this as an opportunity to brainstorm ideas that are useful to all of us. So in the chat box, I am going to send everyone the link. You're going to open a browser and you're going to go to www.stormswithaz.me/join. You can just click on the link in the chat box if you want. And then it's going to ask you for a 9-digit code. And the 9-digit code is, you can cut and paste it right in if you want, but I'll also say it out loud in case that's easier for people. It's 844-271-248. 844-271-248. If you've used Storms before, it's going to ask you to log in. If you've never used it before, you're gonna need to register an account, which means you have to put in an email and create a password. So I'm gonna give you all a minute to come in. I see a bunch of you are in already. Great, you're all coming in very quickly. This is excellent. If anyone is having any trouble or has any question, you can unmute yourself or you can write it in the chat box. So what we're going to do in here today is a really straight up ideation session followed by a convergent session. So I kept it very simple for the purpose of today, but what I want you to know is that it's so flexible. You can do all sorts of things, from prototyping to challenge statement generation, to enhancement of ideas, to evaluating ideas against criteria, all sorts of stuff. And you can have people working in groups. You don't want necessarily to have people working individually. But today, because it's quick, we're going to be doing it individually. So as you can see, there's a question here that we have with instructions. So it says, what might be all the ways you could add value to your clients during this time? So I know a lot of clients are canceling meetings, and often they're canceling meetings because they don't know that it's possible to do these things virtually. So think about that a little bit and let's add some ideas. So treat the cards as Post-it notes. For every card you add, it's like creating a Post-it note, one idea per card. And if you write in full sentences, it's much better because then everyone else knows what you are writing about. Russ and Sarah, I'm going to share my screen just so that for the benefit of the recording, so that people that are not live can also see what's happening.
That would be great.
So at first, you're only going to see your own ideas on the screen. And in a little bit, I'll release it so that you see everyone else's. Of course, this is a group with a lot of ideation experience, I think. So we're doing really well here. And we're moving from 39, 40 ideas very quickly, 43, 44. They're just coming in at high speed. So I'm going to pause you all. And I'm going to make it possible for you to see everyone else's ideas so that you can be inspired by them. But I'm also going to create a new space where you're going to be able to add ideas with a slightly different question. So Russ and Sarah, I actually couldn't help myself. I wanted to have some fun in the design. And so I added an additional question. And the question, if you scroll down to the bottom, is how might your favorite superhero add value to your clients during this time? So use that as a prompt to come up with some novel ideas.
Ginny, I'm not seeing that on the bottom of my screen yet.
Thanks, Jonathan.
There we go.
So I'm going to leave 2 more minutes of silence for you to add, maybe less than 2, since you are all such pros at this. This is excellent. Okay, let me ask you to pause for a minute. We're still going to do a little more divergence, but go ahead and create any card that you're in the middle of typing so that it is saved. Notice that we've just created more than 100 ideas in just like about 5 minutes. This is amazing. So I'm going to take us into a different step where we're still going to do some divergent thinking. But this time you're going to look at the ideas under the red space, the ones that are inspired by your favorite superheroes, and use those ideas as inspiration to come up with new ideas that are feasible that you could actually do. So you see what I'm saying? Use the ideas in the first column to inspire you to come up with new ideas, and put the new ideas into the pink area. You know what? I'm going to change the color so it stands out. You're going to put the new ideas into the green space. So this is useful to do, especially with the really wild ideas that they're a little too wild. This is an opportunity to tame them down a little bit.
Ginny, while we're doing this, how much time do you usually give people to think like a normal crowd who's maybe not trained?
It depends on how many people are in the group, of course, and it depends on so many things. It depends on the question and how familiar they are with it. So often, if they're not trained, I don't have them come up with cards individually. I have them come up with cards in teams of 2 or 3.
Okay.
Also, if they're not trained, another thing I'll do is I'll have them see the cards that other people are putting in. Because if they see others adding cards, then they get ideas for what they might add.
Makes sense.
You know, in my experience working with Ginny compared to face-to-face groups, it's about the same amount of time. The brainstorming actually goes a little bit faster because people can type, they don't have to talk. But you're still spending a good bit of time giving people the opportunity to think, giving people the opportunity to process. And it's quiet, so those people who are introverts like me, who need a little bit of time to think, they get that time.
Jonathan, that's right. There's some great ideas here. Is everyone ready to do some converging?
Yeah, can I ask a question before we do that, Ginny? Will
Yeah.
people get to see this collection of ideas after the session? Like, can you send these to us?
Yes, definitely. I'll export everything. I'll put it into a report and I'll share it with everyone in this call and potentially anyone who's watching the recording who wants it as well.
Okay, so let me just say that anybody, we'll plan to let Ginny send this to everybody. If you do not want to have it sent, send me a personal email and we'll take you off that list, but we're considering that an opt-in unless we do that. Thanks, Ginny, that would be great.
Thank you. Thank you for coordinating that, Sarah. And just so that everyone knows, this has become a tool that I use regularly with my own clients, but I also don't want to be the only one that does it. So I'm happy to do the back-end design for people who want to meet their immediate client needs without you having to learn how to use it. So you still are the facilitator. I'm just in the background creating the setup for you, and then you can do the actual facilitation. So you still look like the superhero to your client. Okay, let's move into a convergence step. I'm going to invite you to place your bets. So I've made it very limiting. This is going to be very challenging, but it's really going to force us to converge. So you're going to have 5 points that you can distribute across 5 different cards, or if there's one card that you really, really like, that you are like, I'm putting all my bet on this card, then you can put all 5 points on that one card. So the way it works is once you click on Got It, you'll see all the cards in random order. And you can click on one that you like, and you can give it, you can place one of your bets by clicking on the plus sign. So again, if you can unmute yourself if you have any questions about how to do this, or if it's not obvious to you, you can also use the chat box. Good, I see some of you are placing your bets already. So we're gonna take 5 minutes to converge. So there's no big rush. You can read through and pick the ones you like the most. And if we had more time, we would be merging cards that are similar, and we could also categorize them and do clustering and all of that.
And Ginny, can you remind us, what's the question? Jerry asked, what's the question again? And is that the challenge question that you're asking about?
What are all the ways of adding value to our clients during this time? That's a challenge question, if that's what
Helpful,
it's
yeah.
asking about. Mm-hmm. There is no chat box inside Storms, only, but I usually use it in combination with Zoom.
So a question from the audience. Ginny, can you see how many people still need to vote, like from your seat?
No, not really. I can see when people are adding cards, but I can't see who has voted or who hasn't voted.
And isn't it true that there's another question, many of the ideas are replications. So how do you manage voting prior to clustering?
Yeah, so we would take more time to sort through them, set some ideas that are replicates aside, merge ones that are not identical but maybe similar, or we might do some clustering before voting. So that's all part of the design, the planning that goes into designing the session beforehand.
That's helpful.
Hmm. Another way that I've managed this number of ideas is to have people go into breakout rooms in Zoom and work in groups to sort through cards. So like, for example, one group can be assigned to cards 1 to 15, another group 16 to 25, or whatever you're doing, so that they can sort through those, and then you narrow them down faster.
Mm-hmm.
Can you walk through the voting again? So you click on a card, Suzanne, you click on a card that you want to vote on, and then you'll see a plus sign that you can click on to place your votes.
And make sure you are in your own browser. You're not looking at Ginny's screen.
Thank you, Russ. Yeah, the Zoom screen is for the recording purposes. You want to have Storms open on a separate browser.
I think that solved the problem for a couple of people.
Okay, good. Okay. Who needs more time for voting? Tell me in the chat box. Or tell me, maybe it's easier, those who have finished voting, tell me I'm done in the chat box. Good, I think the majority of us are done. Excellent. Very nice. Very nice, okay. Good, so let's have a look at the results, shall we? The top ideas are here. So the very top one is using our CPS facilitation skills to help customers cope with immediate challenges. So if you click on that bar, on the bars that are the tallest, you're going to see the full idea. The next one is design principles for virtual meetings. Yes, I think a lot of companies are needing that. They're just moving into doing virtual meetings, but they don't have the culture for it. They don't know all the tips, and so people are not joining with video, or you can only see their foreheads if you've had that experience. The other one is I've been having sessions with people's kids who are home. Yes, I love this idea. I voted for this one. So let's open it up to some conversation and discussion.
Let me ask you, Jenny, because there's a question in chat. Are ideas anonymous, or can you label who put the idea forward, or how does that work?
Yeah, you can choose to have it be anonymous, or you can have people's names on the idea depending on how they sign up. So you want to give instructions as they're signing up for the tool to either use their own name, or they can just have an anonymous name.
Okay.
Only the facilitator, though, even when they do use an anonymous name or a real name, only the facilitator can see who created a card. And then it can go into the report as well. So the reporting can be anonymous or not.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk maybe about the ideas themselves. And I'm curious to see what are some of these ideas. Is anyone in the meeting inspired to actually do something based on the ideas that you're seeing?
Judy was asking if the ideas could be modified or improved during the session, or do you do that by talking with people, or like, how do you handle that?
Normally I create a step for that, and in that step there are actual enhancement questions that I put into a card, and so then you have conversations in small groups, just like you might do a point analysis. So you want to ask people, what are the positives, what are the opportunities, what are the issues, and there's a space to answer, to basically diverge under each of those questions.
Okay.
Yeah. So who would like to share something that they have seen as an idea that they're inspired by and they actually want to act on it? You'll have to unmute yourself. Let's go back to Zoom. All right, I'm going to call on Kristen Peterson. Kristen, you've been so quiet. No. Who has unmuted themselves? Who is ready to speak?
This is Jerry.
Yes.
I've unmuted myself. I guess I'm just a little bit overwhelmed by all the possibilities here. My business model, I'm a chair with Vistage, and we hold monthly group meetings of 15 or 16 people. And it looks like, for some short time, we're going to have to go virtual. And I've been having a really hard time trying to visualize how to manage that meeting. And I can see just, whoa, this is awesome. The combination of Zoom and Storms. We go through what we call issues processing, where it's sort of the clarification process where people get up and talk about what their challenge is and what some of their questions are. And I can see using this not only to help the members ask questions of the person who's presenting, but also ideate solutions as well. So
Exactly, you got it.
this is really cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, you can turn a whole 2-day event into an engaging session by combining tools and combining activities and doing different things. You don't want to just do brainstorming, right? You want to do a mix of things. And that's where there's so much potential to get creative with online tools.
Ginny, I have a question, please.
Yes, please.
Do you need to follow an online course to do this? And that's one question. And what does it cost? Do you have to subscribe for it, or can you? Is it just open source? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? I think it's a great tool.
Sure. Yeah. So I didn't plan to be talking about Storms itself, but I'm happy to. So there is a learning curve to learn how to use it because it's so flexible and because you can do so many different things with it. So if you have urgent needs, my recommendation is let's set up a call, and we can talk about what it is that you need. My team can do the design, and then you can facilitate it. And if it's a design of a type of meeting that you run repeatedly, you can just reuse that design again and again, and you don't need any specific training. You just need to know how to facilitate it, which is fairly simple. Doing the design is what requires more training and time commitment to learn how to do it. At the moment, there aren't live trainings being offered, but I've been training people via coaching sessions. So depending on how tech savvy you are, some people can learn in a matter of hours. If it's something that you really want to learn to use, and if it's something that you see yourself doing the design yourself on a regular basis, then that's great. You should learn it. If you don't really enjoy the design process and you just enjoy the facilitation process, then just get us to design it for you and you do the facilitation. So in terms of the cost of having people come into the platform, there is a cost of $10 US per login per month. So if you're running 2 sessions in 1 month with the same participants, you're only paying that once. And it's the facilitator who has to have the subscription and pay those costs, not the participants.
Ginny, I think we have a question from Joran that I can't read who is, it's Joran?
It's Jeroen, yes.
There
Thank you very much,
Sure.
Sarah. Ginny, I've got a question because we're now in with 46 people. What's your experience, the ideal number of participants?
I've done it with 400 people.
So, is that ideally?
No, it's well, I mean, yeah, it works really well. It's just the logistics are very different. So the more people you have, the more you want to have them meeting in separate groups and working, ideating in separate spaces. And then once they've narrowed down ideas, then you can bring those ideas together. So it's just a different approach. It works really well. I mean, I've used it with coaching clients where there's just 2 people and it's just the client doing their own brainstorming, right? So that works really well as well.
Yeah, okay, let me reframe it in that way. What's an ideal number of people in a breakout? And do you need for each breakout a facilitator in these kind of sessions?
Great question. Okay, thank you. So in that case, I'd say ideal is between 8 and 25. That's very easily manageable and can be very productive. And you don't need to have separate breakouts or spaces.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd like to ask another question. It's not exactly a Zoom question. It's not a Storms question, but more a Zoom question. When you have breakouts in Zoom, what's the ideal amount where people can talk to each other? Is that the same?
Personally, I like having a maximum of 4 people in a Zoom breakout room. That's my preference based on my experience. Maybe there's people that do it differently. Jonathan is saying no, so he does 4.
Yeah, no. I would agree. I'd say 4 to 5.
I'm accusing Jonathan of saying no so that he can make his screen big and everyone can see what an amazing background he has. But people have been asking about how to make backgrounds. How do you do that, Jonathan?
Yeah, so I put their directions in the chat. Basically, I think it's on the lower left-hand corner of mine, next to the start video or stop video button. there is a little caret, and if you click on that, one of the things you see is choose a virtual background. And once you do that, you'll see that there are some options. It may tell you to download an add-in, and that takes all of about 4
Is
seconds.
that in Storms or in Zoom?
Sorry, that's in Zoom.
Oh, in Zoom.
That's in Zoom.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and so then, so you can do all sorts of things. Like I can go from outer space to the Golden Gate Bridge to deep in the weeds, which is where I like to spend my time, along with Janice, apparently.
You. Cool.
Yeah. By the way, just I put three other resources in the chat. 2 book recommendations. My favorite book for designing live on. You can't see it because of the background. Isn't that fascinating? I'm holding it up, and it clearly looks like a blade of grass. And so this book called Interact and Engage by 2 of my former colleagues at Dale Carnegie, Cassie Labori and Tom Stone. This book is this is the resource for all sorts of activities when you're trying to figure out, hey, what's a good way to get people to do X? There's some great stuff in here. Another book I would recommend is Live Connections. This one's my second favorite, but Interact and Engage is a great resource. It's my favorite right now. The other thing, I'll hold it up while I talk. The other thing that's really cool for a very simple brainstorming is if you haven't used Poll Everywhere. Poll Everywhere is a very simple platform. They've got a very, very rudimentary brainstorming function where people can input lots of ideas and then vote on them, giving them a score of either +1, 0, or -1. And that's a great way to sort through stuff. Again, very simple, very rudimentary, but it's a nice way to get started like today. And they have a free version, which I think is good for up to 24 responses or something like that. So there'll be more.
That's great. Thank you, Jonathan.
Can I ask Macker, Mike, can you pipe up with your recommendation? I saw you wrote something in chat.
Kahoot is a really excellent way to do an online quiz, and it's a gamification of quizzes, and we've done it with teams when we do agile practices and principles. That's like the warm up, and it's fun. And then it shows a leaderboard after every quiz question, and it's got fun music, and you can do it on your phone, or you can do it in a browser, and so you could do like a refresher or just a nice fun icebreaker with people.
How do you spell that?
KHOOT.IT.
Okay.
I'll put it in OOT.IT, and I'll put it in chat as well. And it's free.
Thank you.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Good.
Great.
Janice, do you want to share your comment to the group?
Yeah, we tested and used Poll Everywhere at one time. Remember, Helen, it was a group, I think there were somewhere between 75 and 100 people, and literally in the middle of our session, it crashed. So, and that was with testing.
When you say crashed, Janice, do you mean that it froze?
Oh, yeah, it wasn't functioning in the room. They had Wi-Fi and whatever. So the good news is that never happens with storms, ever. Does it, Ginny? Yeah, it was just, we planned, we did everything we could. It was the client's site, and it was the good old on the fly having to reinvent your workshop so a bunch of people could give information that we needed to be polled. So it was kind of funny.
One of the things to know about Poll Everywhere is you have to have an account that will handle sufficient volume.
They have
like
the account.
If you got 75 people and you're going to be getting like 7 or 8 or 9 responses from everyone, there's the math ladders up. I've had great luck with it in groups up to 150.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's lots of excellent tools out there, and we could create a whole list of them.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm such a fan of Storms because it gives me the flexibility to do all the different things. So you can do polling in Storms, and you can do networking activities in Storms, and lots of other things.
And some people have been kind enough to add tools into the chat session. If you have a tool, could you add it in the chat session, and then we'll circulate this to everybody? I mean,
Sarah, can I suggest that instead of putting it in the chat, that you put it in the Storms? I'll create a space right away for tools, because that way we have everything going out in one report.
Even better.
I'm just creating it as we speak. Okay. It should be visible on your screen at the bottom, and it's yellow. So add in tools that you've just been mentioning. Excellent. Stormboard is a good one. Nice. This way everyone will have them. In another session, Sarah, we could dedicate more time to sharing those tools, but rather than just naming them, actually sharing like what are they useful for and
Absolutely.
Extra information.
I mean, honestly, this session was really meant as a, let's just get in a virtual room together and start figuring out how we can contribute to each other and how we can share the tools we have to contribute to the clients that we have that are all feeling just as stuck as the rest of us. So
yes. Great, thank you so much. And I'm sorry, I know there was lots of questions in the chat that might have been for me that I didn't get to, but I put in my contact information, and you'll also get my contact information when I send out the report from the STORM session. So happy to hear from anyone.
Thank you,
so much.
Thank you.
And Sarah, did you want to, thanks so much again, Ginny. And then Sarah, do you want to go ahead and share your screen for your last kind of tips?
Oh, sure. I will. The last thing that I do want to share that is an instant gift to you guys is, again, we will post, ideally this afternoon, but maybe by tomorrow, in your presenter learner map, we'll send you a link for how do you get to that learner map again so you don't lose it. And then we'll post this checklist as well as a slideshow that you can use to do a virtual FourSight debrief. Again, FourSight is just one tool that you can use to support people, but the tips for how to run a virtual session are not all FourSight specific. A lot of it is how you should present yourself, the lighting, the background, how to manage some of the technology. So that's a much more generic primer on how to go online, and I urge you to watch that video. We'll send it again with the follow-up for this session. Russ, do you want to wrap?
Just want to thank everyone for joining us. If you have feedback, we'll be sending out a little bit of a short survey for whatever other kinds of sessions you'd like. And we're planning to hold a session at least once a week during this time just to really address topics of interest to the community and to have a chance to connect. So thanks everyone for joining us, and look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you, Russ and Sarah. Thank you, everybody.